Welcome, Ankur. This is our series of interviews that we call participant testimonials. The larger objective is to help others who are trying to exploring coaching or trying to become coaches or trying to figure out which education institute they want to go to hear participant experiences and then which can help them to make up their mind. That's the objective. Of course, another objective is to actually figure out what went through as you came in as one of our very esteemed participants. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are in candid conversation today with Ankur Ashwin Bhuva, who works with one of the world's largest reinsurance companies in the capacity of Vice President, Organizational and People Development. So welcome, Ankur.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here and looking forward to share my experience.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to, ask you some very simple questions, and I want very candid and open answers.
Absolutely, as honest as I can be.
So let's jump in, and let me ask you my first question. What made you take up coaching as a critical skill?
As I said, I'm going to be as honest as I can be. So to be honest, coaching, and specifically the brain-based coaching certification with NLI, has been on my mind and on my development list for, I think, almost a decade. And this was way back in 2012 when a colleague of mine attended the course. And after she attended the course and came back to work, the way she approached conversations, and I looked at her as my mentor. She was a couple of levels above, but we were more like peers. And I would approach her with a lot of situations, and the way she started approaching those conversations were very different, and I started asking her, like, what are you doing differently? Like, what did you do, right? And she told me about the coaching certification with NLI, and ever since it was on my development list. And I don't know why I did not prioritize it. And I wish I had 10 years back, but as they say, it's never late than never. So one of the reasons why I really looked at the coaching certification now was, sometime last year, I kind of had a little shift in my role. When I say shift in my role, not specifically from a designation standpoint, but in terms of the work that I do. So I started working more in an agile team when I took up the role of sort of an agile coach, scrum master, project manager, whatever you want to call that role. And I suddenly found myself working with my colleagues, many of whom would come with tons of experience, right? So, and I realized that I have to be in a position, rather than advising or telling them what to do, how do we kind of bring out the best in them? And that's when I thought coaching will be the best approach. While I've had a little experience coaching in the past, but really putting a structure, going into, how the brain functions and how it responds and reacts to, the whole coaching experience, or the kind of questions that we ask through coaching, really changed my perspective. And I'm so glad I picked it up because it's really impacted the way I approach and work with the teams that I'm part of, the agile teams that I'm part of. And that was one of the primary reasons I took this up.
That's so heartening to hear, that you were actually thinking about this for quite a long time.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Coaching is one of the most sought after skills today. In fact, if you study the competency frameworks, many companies now adding coaching as a top leadership skill. And so glad that you went through the journey. But now that you've gone through this intense journey, and pretty intense, I must say, how has objectives been met?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Somin. One of the objectives was, as I mentioned, for me to be able to, work with the team that I'm part of. And the other objective, obviously, was to look at an opportunity in the future in the space of executive coaching, because I've been in the learning and development space for almost 18 years now. But I think I kind of got more than what I asked for, to be honest. And I've experienced tremendous personal change more than anything else, and that's been extremely heartening because a lot of times, we take decisions in the moment or how we feel. And I think what coaching has done is really take some time, speak about it, help deeply, connect to your values, and then make decisions based on your values. And I realized that helped me connect more deeply. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I think I will continue to regret not being, not taking up this course 10 years earlier, because all this while I thought that, I need to have enough experience to be able to coach. But a couple of the best coaching experiences I've had are with participants of the batch that I was part of, who are just out of college, and they are amazing coaches. And the impact that they've helped me achieve in certain situations that I found myself was just amazing. And I've realized that this skill is not about, you having 10, 20, 30 years of experience. This skill is something that anybody can learn and use it so effortlessly in any conversation. So I think, as I said, I think I've got more than what I've asked for from this session.
That's wonderful. But Ankur, you've kind of answered my next question in a manner, because I was going to ask you about why did you choose brain-based coaching. I think you have pretty much explained that. But so I'm going to ask you that, what were a few things that you found very exciting about the brain-based coaching approach? Because see, there are many schools of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from real brain research. So any things that you found were really something which is very exciting that you picked up from this program?
Absolutely. I think the first time I was exposed to information around the different chemicals in the brain was this video I watched of Simon Sinek, right, where he talks about endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. And that was really exciting for me. And I started understanding why I felt the way I felt at certain times in certain situations, or why people felt and reacted in those ways. That was my first exposure, right? And when I got to know, when I read a little bit more about the brain-based coaching certification, I realized that it is deeply ingrained in neuroscience. And we also, during the course, talk about how these different chemicals create an impact on how people respond to different situations. And that got me excited, because what we are doing is we're not just understanding what we should be doing in a conversation with a coachee or even with ourselves. We start understanding why we are behaving in certain ways. And I think that why is a big, awakening, or it's sort of an awareness. And for me, it was more like light bulb moments at the time when I understood this deeper. And I think that was the impact of it. And that is why I chose this coaching certification over many others out there in the market.
So very succinctly, you put it very nicely, Ankur. Basically what you said is we now know why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Know that, then your ability to make shifts or changes becomes much easier as a coach. Yeah. So, and you talked again about transformation in your personal life. I mean, in your professional life, you're seeing changes happening. Can you give us some examples of any transformation that you're seeing as a person, in your personal life?
I think the biggest one, and can I share an example?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm married, and my wife also is in the learning industry. She also comes with about 17, 18 years of experience. And like every marriage, you have arguments, disagreements, and what generally tends to happen during those arguments and disagreements is we start saying really hurtful things to each other, right? And this was the time when I was learning about the coaching certification. I mean, during the coaching certification, I learned something really powerful. It's called clearing the space. And during one of these conversations with my wife, where we were arguing about something, and obviously, she started saying a few hurtful things. And in the past, the way I would respond to it is I would just shut down, I would just keep quiet and not react. And we wouldn't speak for 2 days now. It would be like a Cold War. But at that moment, when she was saying those hurtful things, I took a moment and I said, hey, you know what? What you're saying is really hurting me, but I'm going to keep that aside for now because I really care about this relationship. And that was so powerful. I don't know. I didn't really take a moment to see how it felt for her, but for me, it just changed the entire perspective of how I approached every situation. And I think that was one of the most powerful experiences, that moment. And then that helped me realize that I can use this in every situation in life, in every conversation, in every relationship.
As I was hearing you, your expressions told me that this really meant something for me. So
Yes.
That yes, clearing this space. But more importantly, even you might like to look at SCARF, for example, the social drivers of threat and reward, and how we actually offset when people are socially threatened, because all arguments or even a heated discussion is basically a social, triggered by some social things, right?
Correct.
So all these models are actually all very much usable in professional and personal life. So
I agree.
So glad to hear that. Taking on another direction, how did you find the virtual experience? This is a completely virtual program and it's quite long. So what has been your virtual experience?
Well, we didn't have an option when I took this up. It was a virtual experience. But what I realized is, I've been a facilitator all my life, facilitating classroom sessions, and we all had to move into this virtual setup of working from home and learning as well. But I felt it was no different. In fact, I felt it was even better. The reason being, it's spread over a few more days. That gives you more opportunities to take some time to reflect. Because what happens is, an entire day program, you finish the program, you go back home, and you're busy with other things. Right here, I did the program on, let's say, Friday afternoon, and I had an hour or so to think about it Saturday morning, to reflect on it, and then get a deeper perspective. So when it was spread across a couple of weeks, you had that time to go back, read your notes, reflect on it, and get a deeper perspective. I think it worked better for me, to be honest, because I'm a very reflective learner. I like to take some time to think about what I just heard or understood or learned, and then maybe come back and talk about it, and then gather more perspective. So for me, it was the best approach.
Now that you talk about the spacing out, we call this spacing. It is part of our ages principle, which you have probably seen during the coaching.
Yes.
Principle of how do you actually allow the brain to learn and recall memory.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The entire program has been designed. You may not know this, but the entire program has been designed virtually using the ages principle, which was invented 10 years back in New York University research, neurosciences.
Yes.
Since I know your organization is a global client of NLI, you may like to pick up the NLI white paper on ages. So yeah, so it works. When you scientifically design a program, the virtuality of the program is such that it actually sinks in. You recall much more. So thank you for that confirmation. Okay, now my last question to you is: so you always wanted to be a coach. You were inspired by a mentor. You looked around. You found the neuroscience approach something worthwhile. You went through a very intense but a very exciting virtual experience. Now you also see transformation in your personal and professional life. Okay?
Yes.
So I want to ask you just two last questions, quick questions. So top two takeaways from this program. Top two takeaways from this program. And from here, where now?
It's a tough one. There are quite a few things that I took away, but let me give you a professional perspective from an organizational standpoint, and then maybe a personal one. I think from a professional perspective, more and more organizations are moving towards working in more agile teams. Concepts like holacracy, which is self-managed teams, and humanocracy are coming to the forefront now, especially considering everything that's happening in the world, with the great resignation in the US, with the pandemic and the stress and personal resilience. So, and what's being demanded of leaders is to move away from being that expert and achiever kind of a leader to be more a catalyst leader. And a catalyst leader is one who really uses the coaching approach to be able to create a safe environment for their employees to be able to bring out their best in everything that they do, right? And that's where I feel it's extremely important. And that's one of the biggest takeaways, where we will see more and more leaders developing this skill, investing in this skill. It's a very important one. It's going to be right up there for every leader to demonstrate in every conversation. because we slowly are realizing that the strength of the people is more stronger than the individual themselves. So that is from a professional standpoint. From a personal standpoint, I think one of the things is, in every conversation with my friends, my family, I've moved away from trying to jump in and advise, and I've taken some time to really ask the right questions to understand their perspective more, to understand what they're experiencing in the situations they are in, because what we see and perceive from outside could be very different from what's really going on inside. So for me to take the time to understand the perspective is been quite phenomenal in terms of connecting deeply with them. I think these are the two perspectives primarily. There are a lot more, but I think I'd probably like to share about it right now.
But isn't that very interesting? When you actually engage in a different conversation, the conversation moves in a very different direction. And you realize that, you were earlier leading people, and now the conversation is becoming insightful. So that's very exciting. At least for me, it's very exciting, when we engage in such conversations. Yeah. So from here, what's your plans? I mean, how do you want to use this, this newly developed skill in your professional life?
To be honest, when I started, I thought I'll use this only with leaders within the organization. But to be honest, I have been using this skill more as a life coach now than just as a leadership coach. More and more conversations are around managing stress, relationships, personal well-being, so on and so forth, and not as much as leaders managing their team. And I've suddenly realized that this experience, and it's I don't sit in a conversation thinking, okay, I'm going to be the coach, you're going to be the coach. It's just that you're wearing that hat of the coach most times, and you're seeking permission to kind of ask those questions, which are really getting people to think deeply. And I think that's what I want to continue doing, to see how I can continue helping more people tackle different situations in their life, not just with respect to work, but them as a whole being.
That's a very noble thought, and I wish you all the best, Ankur, in that journey. As coaches, I think the biggest thing we can do as coaches is to help the world become more human. And and I think there are hundreds of people doing some really fantastic job, and you join that community of brain-based coaches. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, Ankur, Bhuva, and Saumen Chatterjee signing off from this very short conversation that we had. And see you again, Ankur. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day.